Hello, and welcome to another episode of Poetry FM 101. This is my favorite corner in the world, and now it can be yours too. I'm your host, Nitin George, and this is Poetry FM 101, your weekly dose of poetry. So get ready to have your heartstrings plucked by the sweet melody of words, dance to the rhythm of rhymes, and swim in the sweet symphony of sonnets. And so, let's dive into poetry and ensure that you have a poetic day ahead. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Poetry FM 101. Now, I have with me a very special guest in the studio. As always, I will not be revealing anything about this poet, this guest in this episode. That will happen on the later episode, following one on Thursday. But in this episode, we are going to get to know this poet a little bit deeper based on their poetry, based on the kind of works that they create. So I think without further ado, I would like to ask my guest to maybe recite one of your poems, favorite poems, maybe.
I'd love to. Let's see what it opens to. Since we're doing that. Okay. This one is called Rusted Wings. She flew lower than the rest. They were better than her in all ways, and reminded her every day of it. Your wings look rusted, they'd say. Theirs was pristine. Walking slower than the rest, she was always disheartened, and started to believe in every word they said. Her wings felt heavier, looked rustier. A curse, she'd think. She stopped flying. The celestials were on the lookout, a prophecy to fulfill. Find the one whose wings emerge like a volcano, who can be seen from afar, glowing like 1,000 suns, land's brightest, undying star. A presence enough to warn the enemy, a reflection of the heavenly. They searched the skies and almost gave up. Then they heard of her, hiding in the dark. She now stands upon every citadel, spreading her enormous wings, lighting up with the sun and moon, her majestic existence, protecting the lands, and in it, every being.
Okay, wow. I particularly like that line. She now stands on every citadel, spreading her majestic wings. Would you like to explain this poem and, maybe tell the audience what you had in mind when you were writing this? The message of the poem is.
It's mostly about self-belief and how we don't have it. And how, if you're slightly different from the rest of the world, you're constantly questioned. You're not part of the group. You're not good enough.
Right.
And since you're already starting off with this feeling of not being good enough, and somebody says something to you, it's gonna sit with you for a very, very long time. And it kind of limits what you can do. So you've got to go back and sit in the dark. But you realize when you're sitting in the dark that the world has been looking for you. Celestials are looking for you. So you've just got to be who you are.
And it's truly empowering when you discover that about yourself, that it's not all conditioning and what you've been told, but deeper somewhere within, or maybe like all of you, is truly a remarkable thing, and you're free. And that freedom that you get out of it once you're free, right? Awesome. That brings me to a question. And I know that you've told me one-on-one that poetry is something that you recently discovered. But before that, was there ever a time when you felt drawn to poetry, that you had some sort of an attraction to poetry? Have you ever attended a poetry event? Did you recite a poem? So in your head, what was the first encounter with poetry?
Okay, I'll tell you a very funny story.
Go for it.
Again, something that I recently discovered. So when I was in class 1, I think we had something that was, how the school magazine that they tell you to draw stuff. And I used to draw that time. I draw very less now, which really is calling me now. But anyway, so I had drawn a picture and it said, I want to grow up and be a fairy. So, and I remember I had drawn a picture with a fairy like that and her wand, and I had written a poem about it. And it was in the school magazine. And recently, because I started writing poetry full-time, not full-time, okay, but let's just say. So I remembered that this was something that I'd done, and I started looking for my school magazine and I didn't find it. So this is, I think, 94 So I should get in touch with the school and find it. And when I do, I'll send it to you.
Wow. Okay. So it is true. Like your first encounter with poetry did happen long before
I was even
you
conscious
published
of it.
your
Yeah.
emotion.
So I guess I've been a published poet since since I was a child.
Yes, I think getting published in your school magazine counts.
Let's say it does.
It does, for all intents and purposes, and for the purposes of this podcast, we shall say it does.
Yeah.
Right.
Young prodigy.
Or divine alignment.
Wow. Yeah. I'd agree with that more. Yeah.
Okay, so have you ever recited a poem in front of an audience, in front of people?
No,
No? Okay.
not really. That's something I'd love to do, but I haven't really done it till now.
Yeah, that's something that I would love to do as well. So maybe, in the future, I am thinking of ways in which I might be able to organize such a stage where people can come and
Yeah, that would be amazing.
yeah, let's work that out. And I think you'd be one of the first people that I'd invite to be a part of this.
Thank you.
Awesome. Right. So we're gonna have this is all about getting to know you, your idea of poetry, of life, not just poetry, but your perspective and your take on things. So
Let's do it.
on that note, like one of the questions that I want to ask you is, what do you think is in store for the future of poetry? Like, where do you see poetry headed? Because when you're in school, you had to learn poetry, and that came with a certain appeal to it,
Yeah.
dynamics to it, like
Solitary Reaper. I still remember that.
solitary repo, ode to the west wind. So I'm guessing you studied in a CBSE school.
ICSE.
ICSE.
Yeah.
And the idea of poetry, the entire idea of poetry was from classical English. And then as you grow up, you realize, oh, there's so much more to poetry. There's Urdu poetry, Hindi poetry, Tamil poetry. And poetry just, exploded. And now in today's world and age with the whole democratization of poetry and poetry just being like out there for the masses, what do you think is in store for the future of poetry? What are your thoughts about where this is headed?
I think finally the world has space for us to be who we are in whatever small or big sense we see. And words have always been something that sticks to people more than we can ever imagine or more than we understand. So poetry is wherever it's headed, it's definitely headed in the right place. Whatever, see, I'm going to come back to art in general. So whatever art is being created in whatever times, there's definitely place. There's always going to be place, and it's getting more and more easier to make art. The fact that you have this community that you can find, which probably wasn't so accessible before. You can find people who are doing the same thing as you. You might find support, which you probably never had before. So I guess it's just going to be an eruption of all artists. I'd really love this to happen, that a lot of people show up and make art, whatever it is for them, because I know it's projection. It's what it's what works for me, but I guess you know what I'm saying.
No, I think I do get the gist of what you're saying. We are moving more to a place where the freedom of expression, combined with man's need to create, is helping a lot of people create art, create things, create stuff, create technology, create startups. So yes, I think that way I totally get what you're saying, right? So it's looking like a bright and positive future.
Always.
Always. Right. Now, I first started writing poetry, I think, when I was in my fourth grade or something. It was obviously just putting together lines that rhymed at the end in my naive little mind. But over the years, this became more like a form of expression for me, things that I could not otherwise say or write through any other form or means. I could do so through poetry. And eventually, as I started putting it out there for the world to see and read, there was always this idea that came about, oh, so you're a romantic.
My.
And I didn't really know how to answer it back then.
Synonymous to romantic.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those words that have been overused and now does not have the inherent meaning associated with it anymore. But yes, there is this generalized notion that poets are romantics or romantics at heart, right? Not fully understanding what that phrase even means. But what do you think? Are poets romantics at heart? And if so, are you a romantic at heart?
I don't think I'm a romantic at heart in the true sense that the world believes at the moment. Romantic, not in the sense of, oh my God, it has to be about love, it has to be about heartbreak, it has to be about romantic in the sense of how the literal meaning is that you have a view of life that is way beyond what it actually is. In that way, yes, I'm definitely a romantic. And I think most poets are, because you have to have a sense of personal vision, or the way it's like you look at something that is,
And passion.
yeah, oh, passion for sure. Like if you look at something that happens every day, but the way you look at it and the way you can weave words and the way you can present it in the whole grand scheme of things with just words. Yeah, romantic.
Right. Okay. That's good to know. So you are a romantic, but not in the conventional,
Generic sense.
the generic sense of
Yeah.
love.
Being about love bombing
Yeah,
and stuff. Yeah.
the love hate relationship kind of drama stuff. But yes, you're a romantic in the sense that you're a creator, you're an artist, you bring passion to your work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's amazing. I think that should be a definition of romantics that we're able to redefine going forward. Okay. So on that note, can we have you recite another one of your poems, your works?
Sure. Let's do the flip book.
The all right,
Oh,
sure.
okay.
The one that brings out the passion and the romantic.
This one is called Wild Child. She tinted her fingers with berries. She embellished her hair with glowworms. She shared secrets with ancient trees. She planted seeds in the ground like dreams. She whistled tunes with the wind. She kissed every flower in her path. She loved every mountain that rose. She guided tiny streams to conjoin rivers. She danced with ever changing clouds. She waited for the rain to replenish her soul. You could tell Mother Earth loved her. She made the sun rise and stars fall for her.
Wow. Okay. She made the sun rise and stars fall for her. Interesting choice of words that you used there, because I mean obviously we've all heard sunrise before, but stars fall is a term that I'm hearing for the first time. Right? Like
I write about stars falling a lot.
no, I mean obviously they're like when we talk about like shooting stars, we talk about like the shooting star fell across the sky, but otherwise in terms of like the heavenly bodies of stars being, we talk about them shining bright.
Yeah. Not fall.
So interesting choice of words there, right?
Thank you.
And perhaps would you like to give us a little bit of a background into this poem and what was going on in your head as you?
Like I said, I don't think I am equipped to answer this question, I swear, because I'm just a medium. Again, this was something that just. Okay, I have this very funny theory that my muse keeps somersaulting in the chamber of poetry gods because she just decides to drop something in my mind and she expects me to work with it. So I guess we make a good team, I must say. So this was just one of the things that I think the first thing that. Okay, so there was a caption that I posted on my Instagram picture where I was hugging a tree and I said, traded secrets with the ancient one. So
traded secrets with the ancient.
So that's the line here which says she shared secrets with ancient trees. So it's just interlinked and it's too deep a web.
No, I love that. I think you'd make for a good copywriter or like a
writer in general.
Yeah. No, particularly like a social media content writer, like your taglines and the tags, those kind of one-liners are, I think, pretty powerful. All right. Okay. So if there was one thing that you hoped you could change in this world, what would that be and how would you go about doing it?
I think we need to remind ourselves constantly that we are more powerful than we'd ever imagine. We don't believe it. We don't see it. Others see it. They keep reminding us of it, but we still choose to live like we don't.
Right. That's so true. And how do you think you would go about doing this, or helping people or spreading this message?
I guess through writing, because there's really no better way. Because I feel like I said, right, words stick to us more than we can ever imagine. There are lines that we've read years ago. Like at the top of my mind, I remember reading about King Arthur and Excalibur in 7th standard. And I remember the story like I read it yesterday. That's quite funny because it's just words. It's just a story about someone whose destiny was to find the sword. And he did.
And you read it at an age when you were young and
yeah.
had a malleable mind.
It's funny how words just seep into corners of our mind and we think it's gone, but obviously the mind is too powerful and such a huge supercomputer. So if there's something that's in your mind that keeps calling out to you, then I think you should pursue it, whatever it is, no matter in what small way you can. It doesn't need to be for the world, it's just for yourself.
True. I mean, yes, absolutely, 100% in agreement with you over there, I believe. And just to add on to that, I also think that there's a certain part of us that we've lost as we grew up. People call it the inner child, call it the lost child, whatever you want to call it, right? That part of you that accepted no boundaries, that never took no for an answer, and that was persuasive, that wasn't afraid of dreaming, and failure didn't really mean anything. It was just about trying again, right? We all seem to have given up on that person or lost that person somewhere along the way in pursuit of things that actually are meaningless. So, yes, more power to you in helping people discover that about themselves. I think I would also, um, personally, this is my mission, that I would want to, through my writing, through my words, or maybe I don't know what it is. Like, I'm exploring options there, but I want to help people discover that child, that senseless, ridiculous being that never understood sense, but I think was the most powerful thing that you would have ever come to terms.
That's quite literally what my Instagram bio says.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. So
And most of my poems are words for my inner childhood. It's about this dreamy world that probably does exist. Why not?
I think it does. Like,
Yeah, why
right?
not?
You create the world that you
Yeah.
want.
It's as magical and as absurd as I want it to be.
So here's a question for you: if you would not have discovered poetry, in the sense that you have now, publishing a book, and in terms of creating an Instagram, and reciting your works and continuing to do it, what would you think you would have missed out on? Or maybe that's, leaving that aside, what else do you think you would have picked up? Because you seem like a creator, an artist. You don't seem like someone who would, um, be able to stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if not for poetry, then what else would it have?
And it's fashion.
Right, but that's your day job.
Yeah, that's not my day job. That's like,
That's your life.
yeah. Yeah. That is my life. To actually take a, like, I'm so was at least. I haven't, it's been a while. I'm so involved. See, okay, I digress, but anyway, coming back to this. The only thing I'd like to say is I'm a storyteller, whether it's through clothes, through stitch lines, or whether it's through words and poetry lines. Whether it's my novel whenever I finish it. So,
Oh, you're working on a novel.
yeah. So it's basically, I am a storyteller. I'd like to call myself a storyteller, and no matter the medium. So if it wasn't for poetry, I was anyway writing a book, so it would have been the book. If it wasn't for the book, it's already fashion. If it wasn't fashion, it's the podcast. If it wasn't the podcast, I guess it was reels. If it wasn't reels, I guess it was art. So it's just wherever I go, I find art.
So wherever there is, an opportunity to tell a story,
Yeah.
you're always exploring.
Yes.
I think that's wonderful, because storytelling has always been at the heart of the human existence. Even before writing or any of these became a thing, we shared stories, and that's how we
Yes.
we
Right from my grandmother telling me stories.
yeah, that's how we handed down tradition. So all these things like traditions, culture, and all that were, I guess, at some point a story that was handed down generation after generation,
Yes.
and that became a thing. All right, cool. So we're almost nearing the end of the audio podcast, and as we get ready to wrap this up, is there something that you'd like to tell the audience to entice them to tune in for the video podcast that will be going live in 2 days' time?
Yes, my trench coat.
Oh, okay.
No, but the video podcast is a lot of fun, and I'd really wish you'd stay and watch it. I'm sure you'll have something to take away, and I really want feedback on my poetry, so I'd love to know what you guys think about it.
Yes, well, you heard it from my guest. By the way, to give you a little bit of context and reference, when my guest said trench coat, she's literally referring to the attire that she's wearing right now,
And that I made.
and that my guest.
And the story behind how it got made.
Yes, and the story behind how it got made. By the way, guys, it looks absolutely stunning. So, tune in for the video podcast in 2 days' time, where you will get to see this trench coat for yourself and also listen to the story behind it. All right. Well, we will be back again in 2 days' time with the video podcast, where my guest will share a lot more of poetry, a lot more of stories and philosophy. And we'll also have some fun and exciting questions. So stay tuned. But until then, take care and have a wonderful day and week ahead.
Bye-bye.